All right, so I'm working on a little sample .NET web application, and I want to check this in, but right now I haven't added any of the files to my repo. I know that I don't want to add the bin and the obj directories. So if I look at the status here on the untracked files, I don't want any of these obj files. And right now, if I added everything, these would be added. So of course I can use an ignore. And I want to show you a little helper that I use. I've got it set up with GI to expand into gitignores for. And then I can put in something like .NET, tab complete here, and get .NET Core. And then when I run that, that'll spit out a template here for things to ignore for our .NET Core project like bin and obj. And you can see in the output here, we also have some links to websites. So if I open one of these, I can then run that and it'll spit out the exact same template. So basically this site here has a bunch of gitignore files. And you can do the same as what I have with the command line. You could put something in like Visual Studio and then code, and you could generate the ignore file. You could even put multiple of these together. But I like to have a little command line helper to do this. So essentially I call into this site's APIs, and I have the helper gitignores where I could type something like a V and hit tab, and I get a bunch of choices for what it can complete in terms of generating a set of ignores. So a Vim, for example. And then once I've selected the set that I want, once I've previewed it with the gitignores for, I added another helper that'll commit the gitignores. So if I use .NET Core here, now when I run this, the helper will go to the trouble of looking for my repository root. So if I change to that, inside of here, if I list out all the files, you can see there is the gitignore. This is the file that it just modified. I can take the tail of that file. And you can see the ignores are added for the .NET Core bin and obj directories. So I really like having a helper set up where anytime I want, I could use commit gitignores for. I could put something else in like Visual Studio Code. Run that again. It'll make a new commit. So if I look at my logs here, you can see two separate commits here, one for adding Visual Studio Code and one for adding .NET Core. And of course, if I look at the last commit here, there are the ignores for Visual Studio Code. And if I look back two commits, you can see there are the ignores for .NET Core. Now, if you want access to these helpers, if you look in my dot files, and then if I look in here for ignores, I've got a set of wrappers for fish. For example, here is the gitignores for, and then here is the commit gitignores for. And all of these in the fish shell actually point to my underlying Z shell implementation, because at the time I created these, I actually wrote these all in Z shell to begin with, and I didn't want to have to reauthor them to work inside of fish shell. So if you look in here for ignores, come down to the Z shell file, you'll find the actual implementations. And again, I'm just pointing at that gitignore.io website, calling into their API, and then spitting out the result. And if I scroll down here, here is the commit gitignores for, which does the same thing. It just puts the information into the discovered gitignore file and then commits it to the repo.